If you're looking to lose weight, you're probably focused on your diet. And whilst that's really important, it's only part of the story. What changed everything for me was finding the right workout routine, one that combines strength training with cardio. It was a routine that was not only enjoyable, but it also helped me lose 17 kilos in 6 months whilst also gaining some muscle at the same time. I know the gym can feel intimidating, especially if you're a beginner and you have no idea where to start. And with confusing workouts on social media, it's easy to get overwhelmed or waste time doing movements that are ineffective. In this video, I'm breaking down the exact workout routine that helped not only transform my body, but also my mindset. Later on in this video, I'll also give you all the knowledge you need so that you can create your own workout plan tailored to your specific fitness goals that will actually get you tangible results. I'm going to jump straight into showing you my workout routine. I'm sure that's why you're here. If you hear me using any vocabulary that you don't understand, don't worry, in the theory section, I'll be explaining everything, as well as any common errors to avoid during your fitness journey and dispelling any misinformation we often see on social media. So I do 3 weightlifting sessions per week, 2 lower body sessions that are glute focused because I'm focusing on growing my glutes, and 1 upper body session. Although you want to try to lift heavy, you don't want to go too heavy that you can no longer feel the muscle working. Mind to muscle connection is very, very important. There was actually a study done of 2 groups. One group was told to think about squeezing the muscle as they performed the movement. The other group didn't focus on contracting the particular muscle in question and were just going through the motions, lifting as heavy as possible. And the group that prioritized mind to muscle connection actually grew more muscle. So whilst lifting as heavy as you can is very important, you also mustn't lift too heavy that you compromise your form. Form is so important. If you don't perform the movements correctly, you risk injuring yourself, which could be very serious, and you won't be able to work out for months. If you're new to the gym, always make sure you've got the approval from your doctor that it's safe to perform the movements, and make sure you ask one of the coaches in your gym to show you how to use the machines so that you perform the movements safely. So I'm starting with my first compound exercise, which is hip thrusts. Compound movements recruit multiple muscle groups, therefore you can lift heavier and they're going to take a lot more energy, so it's better to place them at the beginning of your workout. I do hip thrusts on a hip thrust machine. I used to do barbell hip thrusts, but they took way too long to set up. You can also do hip thrusts on the Smith machine. It's all about finding the setup that works for you and your body, and that's going to be different for everyone. I find that I get the best mind to muscle connection in the glutes on the hip thrust machine, and it's also quicker. So you want to make sure that your knee is at a right angle. If you have your legs too far out in front of you, you're going to be targeting your hamstrings more than your glutes. If you have your legs too close to you so that your knee doesn't make a right angle, you're going to be targeting more your quads. It's also important that you don't hyperextend your back. This is lifting up your back too high so that your body is no longer in a straight line. If you're performing hip thrusts on the Smith machine or with a barbell, it's also important to find a platform or a bench that's not too high. It should come to just below your shoulder blades. So many people are lifting off of benches that are way too high for them, and that can also really hurt your back. Another common hip thrust mistake I see people doing is robbing themselves of gains by not locking out fully the movement. So what that means is they're not coming up high enough at the top of the movement to make a straight line with their body, so they're not squeezing their glutes fully at the top of the movement, which is where most of the benefit of the movement comes from. So I do 1 warm-up set of 15 reps. You need to pick a weight that's heavy enough. The last 3 reps are difficult but not impossible to do, and because we're starting with a lighter weight to warm up, you should feel your glutes burning as well. Then I move into 3 working sets of 12 reps followed by 10 reps followed by 8 reps, and I increase the weight on each set. So for example, let's say I do 12 reps of 20 kilograms, then I might add 5 kilograms and do 10 reps of 25 kilograms, and then I add another 5 kilograms and I do 8 reps of 30 kilograms, just as an example. But you can obviously add the weight that's appropriate to you. You can even get weights as small as 1.25. So when I'm trying to progress in weight, let's say I've managed to do 30 kilograms for 8 reps, the next session I might add 1.25 and I try to aim to do 8 reps with 31.25 kilograms, so that I'm increasing the weight slightly each time. Form always comes first, so if you feel your form breaking down, you're lifting far too heavy, you need to take some weight off the bar or off the machine. I'm someone who's quite quad dominant, so I have to be really careful of that. I'm making sure my quads are not taking over. So sometimes I don't lift as heavy as I could do because I'm focusing on getting a good mind to muscle connection. Growing muscles is not the same as powerlifting, so you've got to be really careful. Although you want to lift as heavy as you can, you don't want to be going crazy and not feeling the muscle working at all. The hip thrust machine, you won't be able to put as much weight weight on as a barbell because of the mechanics of the machine. The load is further away from you and so therefore is heavier than if you had a barbell. So just bear that in mind if you use the hip thrust machine. My second compound movement is Romanian deadlifts. Now I used to do this with a barbell, but again it took too long to set up, so I changed over to dumbbells. And this is actually a much more beginner friendly way to do the movement because you can start with dumbbells as light as a couple of kilos and build your way up. Romanian deadlifts are a hinging movement, so you want to be imagining that you're sitting back in a chair. You don't want to keep your legs too straight because you're going to target more your hamstrings. Equally, you don't want to bend your legs completely as if you're doing a squat because then you're going to be targeting your quads. If you do Romanian deadlifts against a wall, that can really help get the right positioning as well. You also want to be pushing through your heels, and imagine you're pushing the floor with your feet away from you. That's also another way to help feel the glutes in the movement. Romanian deadlifts, one of the major common mistakes people make is they round their back. That's usually because they're using weights that are far too heavy. It's very important that you keep a straight back during the movement and don't look up. So many people look up and then their neck is not in a straight line with the rest of their body. You don't want to be looking down too much either, but just make sure that your spine is neutral so that you don't hurt yourself. So again, I followed the same sets as hip thrusts, 15, 12, 10 and 8, increasing the weight as I go. You don't have to do every set to failure. I usually do only the last set to failure. To make sure you're working hard enough, you want to be leaving no more than 1 to 2 reps in the tank. So that means, let's say you finish your set of 10 reps, you could possibly do 1 or 2 more maximum, but no more than that. And that's how you'll know that you're working hard enough and you're really struggling on those last reps. If you go to failure on every single set, you're just going to burn yourself out too quickly and you won't be able to finish the rest of the workout. If you don't like Romanian deadlifts with dumbbells, you can of course do them on the Smith machine. That's also a very beginner friendly way to do them as well. So that's the end of the compound movements. We're now moving on to our isolation movements. These target one specific muscle, so you usually can't go as heavy on them. You want to be doing a slightly higher rep and trying to feel the burn. So our first isolation movement to target the glutes is Bulgarian split squats. I like to do these on the Smith machine because I wobble around too much. I haven't got good balance with the dumbbells. I find a Smith machine really stabilizes you, but you can do them however you like. You just need to make sure that your knee is not going over your toe. Again, imagine sitting back in a chair. It's a hinge movement. It's not a squat movement, and pushing through your heels really helps the mind to muscle connection with your glutes as well. This time for isolation movements, I only do 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps with a weight that's challenging enough that the last 3 reps are a real struggle and my glutes are really burning. You might need to play around with the foot placement because if you're quad dominant like me, sometimes it's easy for your quads to take over. So that's where thinking about it as a hinge movement and sitting back can really help target more your glutes. Equally, if you're looking to target your quads, you can be a bit more upright and do a bit more of a squat movement with your knee at a 90-degree angle. It's really up to you how you do the movement depending on which muscle groups you want to target. So I do 3 sets of 15 reps, 12 reps and 10 reps, slowly increasing the weight but not using anywhere near as much weight as I was using for my compound movements, because this is a single leg isolation movement, so you just won't be able to lift as heavy, but that's okay. Now moving on to the abduction machine. This is quite a beginner friendly machine as well. You can work your way up with the weight. I do 3 sets of 15 reps only because I'm fairly new to this machine. I've just added it in to try and target my glute minimus. If you didn't know, the glutes are split into 3 muscles: the gluteus maximus, the gluteus minimus and the gluteus medius. So the first 3 movements, the hip thrusts, the Romanian deadlifts and the Bulgarian split squats, are targeting your glute max. Now the abduction machine is targeting your glute minimus, and then the final movement we're going to move on to is the cable kickback at a 30-degree angle. That's going to target your glute medius, also known as your side glute. Here I do 3 sets of 15 reps and then I increase the weight slightly and do 12 reps followed by another 12 reps. If you wanted to target more your glute max than your glute medius, you could just do a normal kickback, but I prefer to do a 30-degree angle and turn my foot so that I'm really targeting the glute medius, as that's the part I need to grow. So a form tip for glute medius kickbacks is to make sure that you're not using momentum in the movement and just swinging your leg and arching your back to get the weight up. That would mean that the weight is too heavy. This needs to be done with fairly light weight so that it's challenging enough, but you can actually squeeze the glute medius at the top of the movement and you're not using momentum to swing your leg. Now for upper body training, I don't take my upper body training that seriously because I find that my upper body grows really quickly and I don't really want to have big biceps. And I've also built a fair amount of muscle already on my back. I have quite a wide back, so if I build it up too much, it's just going to look disproportionate to my lower body. But if you're a male or someone that needs to develop your upper body training is also really great to give you an illusion of a smaller waist. If you're someone that doesn't naturally have an hourglass shape, you can actually train your upper body to be a bit bigger so that it balances it out. So I do 3 sets of 12 reps, 10 reps, 8 reps, increasing the weight slightly each time. You can do these in any order, but I start with the lat pull down machine, making sure that you're lifting heavy enough that you're struggling on the last few reps, but not so heavy that you're hurting your back or using momentum to really pull the weight. Next is the seated rowing machine. So this is very good for targeting your back. You can have 2 different grips. You can either have your hands horizontal, targets a bit more of your upper back, or you can have your hands vertical and it's going to target more of your lats. If you find that the seat is too far away from the handles, that's what I found when I arrived at the machine, you just have to lift up the yellow handle and adjust the seats so that it's further away or closer to the machine depending on your height. Next is the assisted pull-up machine. Now I still can't do a pull-up. It's actually very difficult for a woman to do a pull-up, even more so if you're tall for a woman, because you weigh a lot more but you don't necessarily have any more strength than someone that's shorter than you. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it, it's just going to take a lot more practice. So I'm working my way through the weights on the assisted pull-up machine. If you don't know how it works, the heavier the weight, the easier it is because it's counterbalancing your weight. The lighter the weight, the more difficult it is because the counterbalance is less, so you have to pull more of your body weight. Eventually, once I've finished doing the lightest weight on the assisted pull-up machine, which is not going to be for a while, I would then move on to assisted pull-ups with a band. Lastly is the shoulder press. You can tailor your upper body training to whatever you want. If you want to do a bicep curl or if you want to do tricep dips, you can really choose whichever movements you want to do. I choose shoulder press because I didn't have a shoulder movement in there. But again, I'm just doing really lightweight because I'm not looking to grow my shoulders, particularly 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps. Now we're on to how you can build your own workout plan that's specific and tailored to your fitness goals. So in order to build an effective workout program, we need to understand how to build muscle effectively. You want to use both compound and isolation movements, as I did in my program, as both types of movements target different muscle fibers. Your muscles are made up of 2 different fibers, fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers, and you need to target them both for effective muscle growth. Compound exercises like hip thrusts, squats, deadlifts, bench press are going to activate the fast twitch fibers. They're going to put what's known as mechanical tension on your muscles, and so you can go heavy on these, and you need to put them first in your workout because they require a lot of energy. If you put them at the end, you won't be able to lift as heavy. I also don't recommend doing any higher than 12 reps in your working sets. I started with 15 reps as a warm-up set because I find if I don't warm up properly, I then can't get the mind to muscle connection with my glutes. My quads start taking over. That's going to be different for everyone, but you want to stay within this 8 to 12 rep range, as that's what's recommended for what's known as hypertrophy training. Hypertrophy meaning growing, so growing your muscles. You see powerlifters, they do sort of 1 rep maxes, 3-4 reps, but that's actually just pointless because unless you're focusing on strength rather than growing your muscles, you're not really going to be growing your muscles in such a low rep range. Equally, if you do too high of a rep range, so 20-25 reps, you're not lifting heavy enough and you're not putting enough mechanical tension on your muscles, and therefore you're not going to be seeing the muscle growth that you want. So I would aim for 2 compound movements. I wouldn't do any more than 2 because you will just be so tired you won't be able to do the 3rd movement properly. So I would ideally do 2 compound movements followed by 2 to 3 isolation movements. Isolation movements are very important because they are activating the slow twitch fibers. That's the other type of fibers that need to be targeted for muscle growth. Isolation movements where you're going to feel more of a burn because you're doing slightly higher rep, lower weights, so in the range of 12 to 20 reps. This is putting what's known as metabolic stress on your muscles, and that's another important factor for growing muscles. You need both compound and isolation to create a well-rounded program. Isolation movements tend to be single leg or single arm movements. So an example of an isolation movement would be a cable kickback or a bicep curl. With your program, before deciding which movements to pick, you need to decide which part of your body you want to focus on, or do you want just an all-rounded full body program. So if you want to target your glutes, following my program would be a good idea. However, if you wanted to target your quads, you could easily swap the hip thrusts for a barbell back squat that you could even do on the Smith machine if you're a beginner. And if you want to focus on your upper body, you could of course increase the frequency of training your upper body to 2 times a week. Some people follow a particular split known as push-pull legs. That's a very common split for males that want to develop their upper body without leaving their their leg training behind. Girls would usually do something like 2 to 3 leg days a week, and then some upper body training as well. It's entirely up to you. You have to decide which muscle group do you want to prioritize, and then create your training plan accordingly. In order for your muscles to grow, you also need to implement something called progressive overload. So this is challenging your muscles enough so that they grow. Progressive overload can be done in many different ways. So you can either keep the weight the same and keep adding reps. So for example, let's say you do a hip thrust of 30 kilograms. For 8 reps, you would aim for 9 reps, then 10 reps, then 11 reps. And this is obviously going to take the course of a few weeks or a few months. And eventually, when it's too easy to do 12 reps with the 30 kilograms, you would then find a higher weight that you can do 8 reps with, maybe 35 kilograms. Equally, you can keep the reps the same and just choose to increase the weight slightly each time. So with 8 reps, you were doing 30 kilos. You add 1.25 or 2.5, depending on how much you need to challenge yourself, and you try to aim for 8 reps. If you get 6 or 7, it's okay. You can build it up to 8. It's very important that you write down how much weight, how many sets, how many reps you're doing each session, because then the next session you're going to aim for 1 more rep, or aim for the same amount of reps with 1.25 kg extra. If you don't track your progress like this every session, you're going to forget what you've done previously, and you might accidentally do the same weight or even a lighter weight the next time. What can't be measured can't be changed, and therefore you can't improve your training and get stronger over time if you're not writing down what you're doing in your training. If you're a female, it's also very important to remember that your hormonal cycle plays a massive part in your energy levels and how much you're going to be able to lift at certain times of the month. If you're leading up to your period, you're going to be very fatigued and tired, and you won't be able to lift anywhere near as heavy as some of the other weeks where you've got more energy. I know that the week leading up to my period, I cannot lift anywhere near as heavy, and I just have to accept that. I try my best and I power through it. But if you're aware of that, then you don't get so discouraged thinking you're regressing with your training, when actually it's normal because you're in your luteal phase. Now we're going to go through some common errors to avoid with your training. A lot of people are overtraining. They're doing 3 leg days a week or 3 upper body days a week, and this is really not necessary. And overtraining will actually have a negative effect on your muscles, because part of growing muscle is also giving it adequate rest for the micro tears to repair themselves. And so you don't really need to do any more than 2 leg days if you're doing enough volume, so enough exercises, 4 to 5 exercises during your workout session. A lot of people are also doing what's known as junk volume, so they're doing about 7 or 8 exercises per workout, which is far too many, especially if you're doing 3 to 4 sets per exercise. There's no way that you're going to be giving it your all on all exercises, because you're just going to fatigue yourself too quickly in the workout. And you're also probably not lifting heavy enough if you're trying to conserve your energy to get through the whole workout. So this is just ineffective and pointless. 4 to 5 exercises per workout is plenty, especially with 3 to 4 sets where you're going heavy enough, where the last couple of reps are a real struggle, and then giving yourself at least 48 hours before you do another leg day or another upper body day to give yourself adequate time to rest. If you don't let your muscles recover and you do another leg day when you're still sore from the previous leg day, you're not going to be growing your muscles because you're overtraining them. I also wouldn't recommend doing cardio before lifting, as you're going to just tire yourself out, and then you won't have enough energy to really lift as heavy as you can, especially on your compound exercises. So I would do your compounds followed by your isolation, and then move on to your cardio. See it as a bit of a treat. You don't need to push yourself really hard. You don't need to be doing sprints. You don't need to be doing Stairmaster if you hate that. Choose the cardio machine you like the most and just walk at a brisk pace. You don't even need to walk up a hill. I hate walking up a hill. It really hurts my calves. So I just walk on the flat for about an hour to an hour and a half. I started off with an hour walking about 5 to 6 kilometers. And then after I'd lost about 10 kilos and the weight loss stalled, I upped that to an hour and a half, doing that about 5 to 6 days a week. But bear in mind, that was also some of my step count. I didn't really do any steps outside of that. I got my 10 to 13,000 steps per day at the gym, and that was it. So that's all you really need to do. You don't need to be spending hours and hours on cardio machines. That isn't going to be an effective way to lose weight. I'm thinking of creating some workout guides for people who are not really sure where to start. So if that interests you, make sure you sign up to the waitlist in the description. Now I'm going to give you some advice that I wish I had known when I first started the gym. And the first thing is to make sure you only follow people that look like you. And what I mean by that is, if you're tall for a woman like me, don't follow influencers and fitness people that are half your height. They're not going to be performing the movements in the same way as you are. They're also going to see muscle gains a lot quicker than you. Equally, your weight distribution is going to be completely different to theirs. Height plays a major role in how we look. If you're taller like me, it's going to be harder to see muscle gains than on a shorter person. You're not going to look as muscular because the muscles are spread out over a larger surface area, so they're not going to appear as big as someone who's shorter with the same amount of muscle as you. Ultimately, us tall people are going to have to build a lot more muscle to look as muscular as our shorter counterparts. Equally, being tall has an advantage because we often look leaner at higher body fat percentages than someone who is shorter. Shorter people obviously have a smaller surface area, and therefore, for the same reason that they look more muscular, they can equally look fatter quicker because the fat hasn't got as much surface area to be distributed across. So there's advantages and disadvantages to every height. You just have to accept the way you are and work with your body shape and your height. A lot is also determined by your genetic fat distribution. So I, for example, store a lot of fat genetically on my stomach. That's the last place it comes off when I'm in a calorie deficit, but you just have to keep going and it will eventually come off. Some other people genetically store more fat in their thighs. You can't spot reduce. You see these workouts on social media where they're saying, oh, do these lunges every day and you'll get rid of your thigh fat. That just isn't how it works. Fat comes off from all over your body slowly and from different places first, and you might have to wait a little longer for fat to come off certain places if you've got stubborn areas, and those are unfortunately determined by genetics. Building muscle is also determined by genetics. Some people are just going to naturally have bigger glutes than others, and therefore with the right training in the gym they can grow big glutes, whereas others can't. Other people have good upper body genetics, so they don't have to train their upper body very much and they've got big biceps. So everyone has their genetic strengths and weaknesses, but very few people have actually maxed out their genetic capability in the gym. Maybe some bodybuilders have, but far too many people are using their poor genetics as an excuse not to work hard in the gym. You can actually change your body more than you think you can. Once you've accepted that you might have to work twice as hard as someone else just to look as good as them, the most important thing to remember is consistency. I neglected consistency for years. I used to blame my overweight body purely on genetics and a poor metabolism, and actually I hadn't even tried to achieve my dream body in the gym. So that's where consistency is very, very important. Healthy diet, eating whole foods, being in a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight is also very important. And it's only now that I've been consistently lifting for over a year that I'm starting to see some muscle gains. I've been lifting for many years, but I never pushed myself hard enough. I didn't use progressive overload correctly, and I didn't go to the gym consistently, and I also did not eat a healthy diet. So before I went on my weight loss journey in March 2024, I didn't see any significant fat loss and I didn't see any significant muscle gain because I wasn't staying consistent. That is number one. It's so difficult to stay consistent in the gym, but you have to find a technique that works for you. So some tips for consistency that I have are removing the barriers that are stopping you from going to the gym. So this could be you don't like going by yourself, maybe you feel a bit self-conscious. Have an accountability partner. It could be a friend, it could be your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and go to the gym with them so that you actually have someone to meet there, and it's going to make you much more likely to go and to stick with the workout program. You could also book yourself a workout class. That's another way to make sure that you get to the gym and that you're forcing yourself to go because you've got a class to attend and you don't want to miss it. Equally, maybe your problem is just getting there. That was my problem. I loved the gym once I was in there doing the workout, but it was getting there that was always the struggle, and I would find an excuse not to go. So if you can have someone drop you off at the gym, or maybe pack your workout clothes in a bag and go on the way home from work so that you're not having to go back out later from your house, that can be enough of a push to build a consistent habit of going to the gym. It's also really important to start slowly and build up. It's going to feel very overwhelming and very uncomfortable going to the gym at first, especially if you're not used to it, if you're not someone that's used to doing exercise, maybe you're quite overweight. It's normal that it's going to feel uncomfortable. You just have to accept that and push through it and keep going, keep showing up for yourself, because it will get easier over time and you'll start to enjoy it. And part of consistency is showing up for yourself when you said you would. So you need to be able to trust yourself. If you say you're going to the gym, you're not going to overthink it and start giving yourself 1,000 excuses as to why you can't go. And the more that you keep to your word, the more confidence that you'll build with yourself that you can actually stick to a routine. So if a whole workout feels overwhelming, you could just simply go and do one exercise and then go and walk on a treadmill and watch your shows so that it's enjoyable. You've done your challenge of one exercise and you've worked out how to use a machine. Maybe you've asked a coach at the gym to show you how to use the machine, and then you do your walking and your cardio and then you leave. And the next time you go, you do 2 exercises exercises and then walk on a treadmill and then leave. And you build it up slowly over time that you don't feel so overwhelmed and so self-conscious about going to the gym. It builds your confidence and gets you used to being in the gym environment, because I know that can be really stressful for some people. A lot of people avoid going to the gym because they're worried about looking silly or stupid at the gym. They think people will laugh at them or judge them. But I can assure you that no one is going to notice that you're there. Everyone's in their own little world with their music. Think about when you were last in a public place. Can you remember anything anyone was doing or saying or wearing whilst you were there? You can't, because you were probably too concentrated on yourself, and that's exactly how it is at the gym. No one's watching you. I know it feels like they are, but the more time you spend in the gym, the more you just realize that everyone's just there to improve themselves. And people who genuinely love the gym, who are perhaps a little bit more advanced than you are, will be more than happy to show you how to use a machine, how to do a movement if there's not a coach on hand to help. And everyone was once a beginner. That's something to remember. We all started as a beginner. Maybe we were overweight, maybe we didn't have any muscle. And so no real gym goer is going to judge you because they were once in your position. So they'll be more than happy to help you because they know what it's like to struggle in the beginning. And if you're really worried because you have no idea how to use the machines, you could always book yourself a PT session. I know they're quite expensive, but if you just book yourself one, that should be enough for a trainer to take you through all the machines and show you how to use them, make sure that your form is correct so that you're not hurting yourself, and give you a really good idea as to how to use the equipment. Equally, if you can't afford a PT, maybe you have a friend or a family member that's a bit more experienced in the gym. They could always help you, show you the ropes, show you the machines, so that you feel a bit more comfortable and you're not there on your own struggling, trying to work out how to do the exercises. Some gyms also offer a welcome session where there's a group of you who've just signed up to the gym and a trainer takes you around the gym and shows you how to use the machines and how to perform the exercises. And that can actually be really useful if you don't want to be by yourself with a PT, or maybe it's slightly cheaper if it's in a group. I don't know if all gyms offer that. That could be a really good way to start in the gym as well. And finally, if all else fails, get a tutorial up on your phone. I have done that so many times. The hip thrust machine that I showed you in the beginning, I had no idea how to use that. I had to get a tutorial up on my phone because there was no one to help at the time. And I watched a tutorial of someone using the hip thrust machine and I tried it out without any weight. And at first I was struggling, but no one was noticing. No one was laughing at me. And so when you feel silly or embarrassed, it's usually just in your head and it's not actually embarrassing if you don't perceive it to be embarrassing. So that was the way I learned to use the hip thrust machine. There's absolutely no shame in getting up tutorials whilst you're in the gym and searching up how to use something or how to do a movement correctly. It is possible to get over gym embarrassment. It just takes time and consistency. Now we're on to dispelling the fitness myths. I see misinformation all over social media all of the time and it really annoys me. People are not being truthful about what really works or how they lost the weight. Some women claim that weightlifting makes you bulky. I highly disagree. If you think weightlifting is making you bulky, that's probably because your body fat percentage is too high and you need to go on a cut to cut down the fat to reveal the muscles that you've built. But weightlifting is so beneficial for you, especially if you're a female and you struggle with PCOS. Maybe you're a bit insulin resistant like me and you hold a lot of fat around your stomach. Weightlifting and building muscle to increase your metabolism is going to be one of the best things that you can do for weight loss. People often throw around this word toned. Oh, I want to use light weights to tone my body. I don't want to be big, bulky and muscular by lifting heavy weights. But actually toned is just a synonym for muscular. It's having some muscle definition with a body fat percentage that's low enough to see those muscles. And if you lift weights that are too light, you're not going to look toned. And don't forget that getting bulky is very difficult to do. Men can build a lot more muscle easier and quicker than women can. That's just how genetics are. Female bodybuilders that have been spending years building muscle and training their body, they don't look overly muscular or bulky. So you as the average gym goer, especially if you're at the beginning of your journey, there's no risk that you're going to become big and bulky from lifting weights. There's also some misinformation about being in a calorie deficit will make you lose too much muscle and therefore you won't be able to build muscle. Actually, that's not true. When you're on a fat loss journey, of course, it's inevitable you're going to lose a tiny bit of muscle, but if you weightlift and lift heavy enough weights that are challenging you, as well as eating enough protein, and you're not in a calorie deficit that's greater than 500 calories, you will minimize any muscle loss during your cut. Also, some people say that it's not possible to build muscle whilst in a calorie deficit, and whilst this is true for more advanced lifters, if you're at the beginning of your journey, so you're new to the gym, or even if you're not new to the gym, if you're like me and you haven't been going consistently for years using progressive overload, you can have what is called newbie gains. So even in a calorie deficit, whilst you're losing fat, you will also gain some muscle because your muscles are responding to a stimulus that they have never had before. There's also a myth that if you're not sore, you haven't had a good workout. Now, whilst being sore can be an indicator that you've torn the muscle fibers and therefore you have stimulated them enough to repair themselves and ultimately grow bigger, as you get more advanced and your body becomes used to your training load, you aren't going to feel as sore, but it doesn't mean that you haven't had a good workout. Something we see on social media all of the time and is a big insecurity for women is hip dips. I have hip dips, it's very common, and hip dips can't be gotten rid of. I see these workouts all the time on social media. How to get rid of your hip dips? Impossible. You could maybe build a bit of muscle in your glute minimus, glute medius, hence why I try and do some exercises for those in my program. And whilst building muscle in those areas may help hide the appearance of hip dips a little bit, it's not going to completely get rid of them. It's part of your bone structure. There's nothing wrong with hip dips. I don't know why social media has made us feel like they are ugly, because they're just a part of the human body. Cellulite is another thing that is very difficult to get rid of. I have cellulite, and whilst weightlifting and reducing your body fat percentage are going to be some of the best things you can do to reduce the appearance of cellulite, if you build muscle, the fat is ultimately spread out over a larger surface area, so you're going to appear leaner and more toned, and the appearance of cellulite will be reduced. You can't completely eliminate cellulite. Again, it's genetic. It's about the structure of the collagen in your skin, and that really varies depending on the person and their genetics. So if you've got cellulite, just go ahead and wear the shorts, wear the skirt, and don't worry about what other people think. I know that's easier said than done, but I promise you, no one's looking at your cellulite, no one's even noticing it, and 9 times out of 10 it's not even as bad as you think it is. Often we are so harsh with ourselves, always criticizing ourselves in front of the mirror, but actually other people would love to have your body. We always want what we can't have, so it's about learning to love yourself and accepting that genetically we are going to be stronger in some areas and weaker in other areas, and we just have to work with that, do the best that we can, and ultimately try and feel confident in our bodies, because it's about making memories with loved ones, and it would be a shame to cover yourself up and deprive yourself of a nice time with your family and friends just because of the way your body looks. Don't force yourself to do something that doesn't feel right. If the exercise feels wrong and feels awkward to do, don't force yourself and push yourself to do it, because you could really hurt yourself. I only do exercises that feel right for me, and that's going to be different for everyone. For example, some people love squats, even for glute growth. They feel the mind to muscle connection with their glutes during squats. I don't, because I'm quad dominant, so I avoid squats. So it's all about finding exercises that work for you, that are enjoyable, that you feel the mind to muscle connection the best, and that's going to be different for everyone. That's why it's so important not to just copy workouts you see on social media, and actually try out different exercises for yourself to see which ones work the best for you. And weightlifting and going to the gym is more than just transforming your body. It's really a mindset shift. It completely transformed my mental health. It was better than any therapy or any medication I had tried. It honestly is so good for the mind. It helps you concentrate. It gives you a focus, something to progress in, challenging yourself each week. You can be proud of the personal bests that you have done, and just building consistency, routine, and being able to rely on yourself to follow through on things that you said you were going to do is just so powerful for your mental health. So what's next for me after my 17 kilogram weight loss? That was phase 1, where I went from 80 kilograms to 63. And this first phase was all about focusing on fat loss and really reducing my body fat percentage whilst building a little bit of muscle in a calorie deficit as well. I really spent those 6 months cleaning up my diet, focusing on progressive overload, building consistent habits of training in the gym, eating a healthy whole foods diet, and getting my steps/cardio in as well. So now I've been maintaining my weight for over 6 months at 64 kilos. It's normal to gain 1 or 2 kilos back when you're going back to your maintenance calories as your body's adjusting to having more food. It doesn't mean that you're gaining back the fat. As long as it doesn't go over 2 kilos, that's fine. So now that I'm 64 kilos and I've lost quite a lot of fat, I am now entering phase 2, and this is a body recomposition phase where I'm looking to build some muscle and lose a few more kilos of fat, but not too many, maybe 4 or 5 kilos maximum, but no more than that. So if you have only about 4 or 5 kilos of fat to lose, body recomp, where you're mainly focusing on building muscle and losing a little bit of fat at the same time, could be a good route for you to go down. I'm just looking to get a little bit leaner. I want to see my abs a bit more, as that's where I hold a lot of fat. So although I have a fairly flat stomach, I don't have visible abs yet. So I'm hoping if I lose a few more kilos, I can get my body fat percentage down a little bit lower to see some ab definition. I also really want to add some muscle to my frame, specifically grow my glutes. as a tall person, it's very difficult to have bigger glutes. So I'm really focusing on training those hard and eating my protein to hopefully gain some muscle. And that's going to really help my body composition, help me look a lot leaner and more defined. But building muscle takes time and consistency and is a lot slower of a process than fat loss. For example, you can lose around 0.5 to 1 kg of fat per week. However, muscle, you're not going to be putting on any more than 0.25 to 0.5 kilograms of muscle per month, especially if you're a female. So this next body recomposition phase is going to be a longer phase. I've got to be really patient to see the results, but it's definitely going to be worth it. So if you're looking to do a body recomp like me, I would suggest a calorie deficit of around 250 calories. Or if you're not looking to lose too much fat and you want to focus more on building muscle, you could equally eat at maintenance. It's entirely up to you. But you don't want a calorie deficit that's more than 250 calories. Otherwise, you're not going to be building as much muscle as you could do. However, if you've got more than 5 kilograms to lose, that was me last year in March 2024, then you're going to need a slightly bigger calorie deficit, about minus 500 calories from your current maintenance calories at your current starting weight. And I would therefore focus on a fat loss phase first, just like I did for 6 months of last year, and then move into phase 2, where you spend time in maintenance or a slight calorie deficit and you focus more on body recomposition and building muscle. That would be a more effective way to do it if you need to lose more than 5 kilograms of fat. So if that is you and you're slightly more overweight and you're wondering where to start and how to approach the fat loss process, watch my video on how I lost 17 kilos in 6 months and kept it off, as losing the weight is doable with the right strategy. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this video has been helpful and given you a better idea of what to do in the gym and how to put your own workout plan together. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and let me know any other videos you would like to see.